I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. And on this episode, we have Andy Bryant back on the podcast to talk about AI. This will be his fourth time back on the pods. Andy, welcome back to More Than Blockchain. How are you?
Hey, thanks. I'm doing great. It is awesome to actually be a real human. Like the last three times, it was just a vocoder. I was just an AI agent in a box. But here I am. I'm a real human being.
We're going to run with that right there. If you were an AI agent, AI Andy is obviously has a nice alliteration, but would you have a different name? Like AI, I don't know. AI what? What would it be?
Yeah, so if I were an AI agent, I would do my best to not make you think I was an AI agent. That would be my primary purpose in life, to be duplicitous. And as such, it would just be Andy. It would be the person that you know and love in front of you right now.
Okay. So, all right. All that makes sense. So I have been thinking a lot about you coming back on the pod, and thank you for doing this. We were trying to do every 3 months, and then honestly, the holidays between Thanksgiving and Christmas, just a lot of stuff happened. And now I'm back in Columbia. You're up in Massachusetts, so we're going to put another episode here on Wax. I was thinking about a question that I wanted to kick this off with, and here we go. So you're going to have to follow me a little bit as I set this thing up. But I was watching something the other day, and it was talking about financial literacy and credit cards, okay? And that if you don't have a credit card, which is totally fine, you may be actually paying or subsidizing those that do have credit cards. And this is because when you go to a store, many merchants will put that 1 to 2 to 3% MasterCard or Visa fee. They'll just increase their prices. So that way they cover that. So it really goes back to the consumer. But if you're using a credit card and you're a credit card user, for example, I have a credit card and you have a debit card. When I go pay, yes, it's 3% up, but because I'm getting 2% back and points or something, in the end, the rewards balance it out for me as a consumer. However, for you, unknowingly, because you're rocking a debit card, you are actually paying a higher premium. You're paying the same premium I am, but then you're not getting the things on the back end, like the rewards. So what I was thinking was, and many people know this, many people don't know this, all merchants, all small business owners are constantly talking about their payment systems, right? And how much the fees are.
Oh yeah.
So what I was thinking, hopefully that was clear. And if it wasn't, you can tell me to do it again. Okay, cool. What I was thinking was, are there things happening now for those that are using AI, let's say that they're the credit card users, that is actually having a negative effect, whether they know it or not, to the debit card users or the people not using AI? So hopefully that made sense.
I used to be an education consultant, and when I was working with schools and universities, mostly on the East Coast, it was really apparent that the folks who had wealth were just in a different classroom, like literally a different classroom, than the people who did not have wealth, right? That were impoverished in some way. I feel like there is the same thing happening with technology as was happening with computer labs or with textbooks or with enough resources, physical resources like libraries and books, right? That's happening there. The same thing's happening with artificial intelligence as well. So I don't know if I would go so far as to say that it's a tax, but I do feel very strongly that embracing this technology is kind of par for the course at this point. And if you're not embracing the technology in some way, obviously depending on your background, obviously depending on your domain, like what you actually do, but for the most part, if you use a laptop regularly, if you're not embracing AI, I do think there's definitely a penalty for that in just how productive you might be.
Okay, so strictly productivity. And I wanted to ask this because I think that there are things constantly in our society beyond credit cards and beyond what I'm trying to ask you about AI, where some people are punished and they don't even know that I like the word you use, that there's a tax being put on them, being levied on their existence or their wallet or their ability and their potential to maybe improve their livelihood. I don't want to really quantify that too much, but I do think that there are things throughout society where it's like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that by doing this thing or not doing this thing, I may be mistakenly hurting myself or not getting the most out of it. And so anyways, that's kind of where I wanted to start the conversation today, because AI is going to start to become really, really ubiquitous in our lives. And anything that's ubiquitous in our lives, people take for granted, right? Like there's a gym in every single city in America. Or if not, you can go out and run. And most people still don't work out. And so not doing that activity is actually, it's a decision someone makes. So it's not something like the credit card. Maybe it's not a decision they're making, but it's a decision that they make, and then that may help them to live a longer life, right? And so I'm thinking as AI becomes more ubiquitous, and I think it's already happening now, I want to ask you, are people already taking for granted AI? And that's such a wide question.
Yeah.
So please dive into
Yeah,
it.
for sure. I mean, of course, like AI, I tend to think it's a bit of a misnomer, or it's just like being used in such a broad way. But yeah, it's sort of embracing like the spirit of the question there. I think that more people, you're interacting with AI more than you think is the big point, right? So if you're on any social media platform, if you're consuming the news, like someone probably generated that text in some way using AI, or a lot of the posts online. Like if you ever get in an internet fight with someone on Reddit or whatever, like chances are like you're fighting with a bot, like which is just like so depressing, right? And there's really clever ways of making it seem like it's a human, and like pulling at your heartstrings. It'll like read all of your previous posts or read all your previous reads or retweets or whatever, so it gets a sense of your personality. But I think in that way, we do have these digital avatars with which we're interacting already. And so, to your point, I think that is happening to a greater extent than most people acknowledge right now, or at least understand. And that's kind of the first point. And then the second point is when that's kind of implicit, right? But explicit, when they do come in contact with some of this AI, in air quotes, this idea. Think about the Google launch of Gemini recently. So that was the kind of the GPT-4 response by Google, and they had it under wraps for a long time, and we were all anticipating it. But that came out, and people were like, "Great! Like, where is it? When can I use it? Like, I guess this is cool. It kind of is better than GPT-4, maybe, but you haven't demonstrated that yet." And so that was just a moment where it was like Google literally just released like a humanity changing model. Like if there wasn't anything like this a year before with GPT-4, it would be like someone just like took the Great Pyramids of Giza and like multiplied it by 10,000. Like this is the craziest thing that has ever happened, and people are like, I think that that's a snapshot of like kind of where we are in terms of like, the water is starting to boil, and we're not really noticing. And so, yeah, for those two reasons, implicitly, you don't really know that you're interacting with it. And two, when you explicitly are interacting with it, you just don't, it doesn't have the same effect because of how inundated we are with it already.
That's how I've been feeling. And it's good to hear you as someone who works in this and is surrounded by it and seemingly consumes a lot of content around it, around the space, around the new developments, to kind of share the same sentiment, because it's kind of like the iPhone. When the iPhone comes out now every year, no one cares. Like it doesn't matter. But maybe the first 3 or 4 iPhones, there was like a lot of hype, and people were just honestly more interested and more kind of like, there was more of a shock value, meaning I'm literally going to put value to my shock and then go out and buy this thing, or a FOMO. And Gemini's come out. And the other thing that's come out, which I want to go right to, which seemingly has gotten almost no news. And I can't tell if that's because there are certain parts of the world that are on fire right now, and they're just more important conversations for humanity to have right now. But long term, the launch of OpenAI's GPT store for me is like when the launch of the App Store or the launch of iTunes. Like I remember very vividly when iTunes came out, and it was like, whoa, I can just store all my songs in here? Because before that, I was ripping them off Napster and LimeWire and keeping them on individual folders as MP3 files. I didn't have this nice user interface and a catalog that was easy to kind of go through, and I couldn't create playlists and do all this stuff. So for me, GPT Store has kind of been launched, and it's just kind of like, I believe it's launched at least, and you can confirm or deny that, but it's just kind of like no one cares. And for me, it's one of the greatest opportunities for entrepreneurs or anyone into AI to go build their thing, sit back and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. I think the reception is due to a few reasons, right? Just like you said, there's kind of an awareness of the product in that form as it is, and then it's kind of a deviation from that. In the same way that when we had the hype around the iPhone, I don't know if you remember, we watched the iPad release as well, and it was like, oh, cool, it's like a bigger iPhone, which like obviously it isn't, but like that was the kind of cubby that the mental cubby that we put it into, right? So that's one, like people have seen this before. But two, I think the other thing is that a lot of people don't really understand, what's happening underneath the hood there. And it's not just like an ignorance thing. I'm not saying like you have to understand all the technology, but like surely the value that you're getting out of something like that isn't clear. And let me just give you an example. So when you're building a lot of these agents, like you would, using the OpenAI endpoint to build like chat agents or customer service agents or, someone to handle your phone calls or your day-to-day scheduling or whatever, right? What a lot of folks are doing is they're using a retrieval mechanism. It's called retrieval augmented generation. If you're familiar with that term, it's RAG.
I am now.
And so, yeah. So, I mean, essentially the big idea is that like, hey, these models like GPT-4 or BARD or whatever, like they don't know everything. And furthermore, we don't want them to know everything because we don't want them to have customer sensitive data and that sort of thing. Right. And so what it'll do is it'll just use the base model as like, hey, you're a really logical answering, like question and answering system, but I'm going to inject my own data into your prompt context at the time that you generate it so that it's more informed, right? And so it's like, hey, like what happened to celebrity X today? And it's like, it will then go search the internet. It will find some of the news articles. It'll inject that into the prompt, and then it will respond with, whatever model we're talking about. So that's a retrieval augmented generation system. Those are difficult to build. Those are not easy. And so like there's the B-, like within the next few hours, you and I could put it together, like no problem. Right. But trying to get to a production grade, like A+, like people will start spending money on your product and on your user experience. Like that sort of agent is not easy to build, right? What OpenAI has done is they've built a platform for people to monetize off of I'm using one example, one design paradigm, but that's one of them that will come out. And I think the real issue is that a lot of folks think that this is just a way to wrap the existing GPT mechanism with like some fancy, like, oh, like I always sound like a pirate. I'm a pirate GPT. No, it's like there's some real functionality going on underneath the hood that is very difficult to build on your own at a production scale. And so I do think that it's actually going to be more useful than a lot of people think. And I think that'll start to become clear, as the conversation surrounding how these products are used kind of evolves.
So this is fascinating. And RAG is retrieval augmented generation. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. You said if you and I screw around for 6 hours, we have an idea and we just sit here and we ideate and we go through and we're going to get something out on the other end. It's a B-, right? You'd give it a B-, right? We're our own harshest critics, especially when it comes to building stuff on the internet.
And it would be great. It would be fun. Yeah. It would be totally cool. We could get it to like maybe order a pizza or something. That'd be fine.
Okay, cool. So that actually is not bad. That would be AI Andy. Order me a pie. So let's see. Okay, so it takes us 6 hours to make a B-. Now, because of the exponentialness of AI, I wonder, just curiosity, in order for us to, to get a B-, it takes 6 hours. To get the B, it takes 20 hours. Not just double, right? It takes 20 hours. Are you saying to get the A+, it's going to take 500 hours of like solid, and I come in with skills. You have your skills. Like we have actual skills we're putting into this. We're not just sitting there like, because I know people who have created GPT since and put them up and I use them and it's no different than if I just use GPT-4 as far as that retrieval mechanism. And so what would someone need to do who's listening to this to like actually go ahead and create something that would be an A or an A+? Caveat, is this under the assumption too that they know as much as you do? Like what's the base that someone needs and then the hours? And I know this is an impossible question to answer. So just flow with it. Yeah.
No, totally. Yeah. So it definitely depends on the product that you're trying to build. But as we've seen in many other machine learning related or artificial intelligence related domains, data is really the key. And so a big thing that's going to power, everything that you're doing in this space, especially for retrieval augmented generation, is not only the amount of data that you have, but also the quality of data that you have. And so if you're trying to build like an intranet system for your Fortune 500 company, You can't just like throw every document that's ever been written by your company into a database and be like, hey, GPT-4, go find it. One, because that's a privacy nightmare, right? You don't want to train a model or give a model access to like all the emails that have ever been sent by the C-suite, right? But two, it's also like, how are we breaking these up? Are we clustering the documents together by sentiment first? Are we, looking for like terms? I mean, there's just like such a pipeline that's kind of responsible. So if you and I had a very specific problem that we were trying to solve, and we had a perfect end-to-end database that had everything that we needed, we could make a pretty tight version still in 6 hours, right? But like that's like, that's the mise en place that a chef gets. It's like there are like teams of people who are like preparing vegetables all night, and then like the celebrity chef gets to come in and be like, oh, look how easy it is. I can do this in 10 minutes. It's like, oh, great. Well, you had a data engineer working for 6 weeks to solve that problem. So the data is huge.
Okay.
And then also just the design of the user experience, so what is it that we're actually, trying to solve here, right? So again, if we had a perfect PRD, if we had a perfect document that just said everything, then that would be helpful. Those two things, so data and design are really important. I'll say that like to fully answer that question, I listen to 1 or 2 hours of AI content a day. And a lot of it is about like optimizing like RAG and like other chat models. I'm sorry, other like design patterns using chat models. And there's just like hundreds of tips and tricks and ways that people have been doing this. But yeah, if you don't have good data and you don't actually know what you're solving for, then that's kind of where you start for a lot of these sorts of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you put in garbage, you can only get out a certain amount of, finished product. And I was thinking about the GPT store, and I was thinking about 2 separate ideas that I think people in every generation have tried to solve. And our generation is no different. And I have this conversation a lot with friends. I just had a friend who worked at a self-driving company in San Francisco. If you watch the news and know about tech, you know exactly what company this is. And he recently got laid off. And before that, he was doing city work, kind of social work. And we met in the Peace Corps. So he definitely likes doing the community aligned, mission aligned work. And we've talked recently about the conundrum that we feel our generation is in, and every generation. We're not, millennials or whatever, Gen Z or Gen Alpha or Gen X. No one's outside of this, which is how do I make money, but also how do I make a difference in the world, right? And ideally, you're doing both. But sometimes we're not doing both, and that's okay. Or we're making a difference that maybe we didn't think we'd be a part of in the team and making a difference. And so my question is, what GPT, if you had nothing but time and all the resources in the world?
Yeah.
First of all, imagine that, right? What GPT would you make that would both be salient for people to work with, and that was also going to get you paid because people are going to, engage with it, and OpenAI is going to cut you that check.
Yeah, for sure. So if the industry stayed flat, if today was a snapshot, and we're not talking about and the reason I'm bringing that up is that so many companies right now, a lot of people are calling them wrapper companies, where they're essentially just using the OpenAI products and putting their veneer on top of it and then selling it to people. And then a few weeks later, OpenAI will make a product update where it just totally makes their product obsolete because all they were was a wrapper company, right? We saw this with, PDF to chat with your PDF, right? I mean, that was the first example out of the gate, and it was an awesome product, and everybody started using it. And then, like, boom, OpenAI put a little upload your document button in ChatGPT, and it was just like, dang, like, all right, boys, like, but let's hang it up, right?
I'll see you at Chili's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if the industry is staying flat, and we can assume that there are no product updates, we can kind of get a sense of what we would do here. I think that I would do something with education. I think that the work that, for example, Conmigo at Khan Academy is doing is really fantastic. Again, that's essentially an OpenAI product that has great data and a great user experience that they've kind of baked in. Essentially, it is both a tutor and a teacher, but it's also like a coach, right? So it's like, I'm not going to give you the answers. I'm going to be thinking about that. But again, when we're talking about RAG, what it'll do is it'll look at the entire context of your window, right? So it's in a browser experience. And so it's able to say like, oh, like they are working on this problem and they are this far through, and this is the work that we've done. And it injects that into the context and then is able to kind of respond a little bit better. That level of personalization, I think, is something that, that's kind of the gold, that is, I'm not going to say it's the panacea, but like it is something that a lot of folks have been kind of pursuing in the educational space, because we all know like one-on-one learning is if you have the good teacher and you have the good environment, you have a good home life, like that is a path forward. I think that this is a step in that direction. And so, yeah, I would love to find a way to make that kind of personalized assistant that has long-term memory, remembers your joys when were doing well in soccer, but also your failures when you like had a hard time, getting ready for the school dance. I mean, like little things like that really help inform, how much you respect and care for your teacher. I think that's something that, people could have with an agent that would really boost their like education. And so, yeah, that's something I'm interested in. Again, 3 months from now, it'll be like, Conmigo 2.0. And I'm like, all right, great. I didn't even get my business plan out the door, but here we go. So something to think about for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because you almost have to say, first of all, like, assuming things are the way they are, like ceteris paribus, and then nothing changes from there, you can only build from that. Because as you said, and I actually put this on the interwebs, but you had texted me, every AI company is one software update away from being irrelevant. And that was just like, geez, because I have seen a lot of these white label rapper, not like Lil Wayne with a W, rapper companies that have just kind of white label, have a really nice website set up. And the back end is that, and you get to search for something. And it could be like, one of the things I've seen a lot is for different cuisines. So like cooking books, it'll be like the vegan AI or whatever, and you can put anything in and it will give you vegan. Others are just basically like anywhere. It could be like, give me Anthony Bourdain's favorite dish that he cooked in Southeast Asia, and it would like find it. So all those things are basically wrappers, and they're one update away from being obsolete. Is that what we're saying?
I would say so. Well, listen, there's a lot of ways to bring value into a marketplace. Anyone can build an Uber app. Like, again, we could do that in a weekend and it would work great for like 10 cars, right? But like, where are the cars? Like, right? Like where's the licensing information that we need for each county? I mean, there's such a moat that Uber and Lyft have built that has nothing to do with their software. Right. And so, for these wrapper companies, like if chat with your PDF, got a government contract that said for the next 10 years, the federal government can only use chat PDF when chatting with PDFs, like that wrapper company is not going anywhere. Right. So there's a lot that's going to like bolster it. But honestly, if I could kind of just like extend the question a little bit, like what might be more resilient to these sorts of changes that are happening, strong opinion is that it's the interface. Right now we have we are watching the cost of intelligence go down and down and down and down, and yet when we're using that low cost intelligence to get us the vegan cuisine, like you said, or get the Anthony Bourdain whatever conversation that he had, that sort of thing, we're still going to get our laptop or going to get our phone, and we're like, okay, wait, ChatGPT, like, hey, remember me, right? That is a cumbersome process, right? And we're seeing something that is dramatically changing the way that we think about intelligence, and yet it's still crammed into this sort of like pocket-sized thing that was revolutionary at the time, but is now, pretty cumbersome, right? And so the other day, I took a trip. I don't have Easy Pass, and I forgot that I didn't have Easy Pass, and I took a trip, and it went through New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and I get triggered like toll by plate for like 5 states, right? So I got all these like
arrested by the National Guard. That's a lot.
No, but hey, they're gonna make money off of me, right? Because they get to put on all the administrative fees. But I'm sitting here and I'm thinking like, I have to go fill out an account online and give my credit card information and type out my address for 5 different states right now. Like, what? You know what I mean? And like, so the next time that I can say like, hey, Agent X, go pay my bills. Like that's a company that like that's an idea that is, one, going to be really tough to do. And then two, I think it's going to be more resilient than, you know, just adding a functionality. It's like adding an interface to the functionality, I think, is the next step that we're going to see in 2024.
I would have never in my mind's eye, gun to my head, have come up with that idea of how to pay bills or how to argue parking tickets or something. Like if you have an arguing a parking ticket app and it's $1 a month, we'll make it subscription because that's the way we live now. And you live in New York City, you would buy a family plan, right? Why would you not if you have a car, obviously, because it's so crazy and that's such a low entry. And so you had brought up, if you want to access AI, you have to go get your computer. Or I have to get my phone.
And obviously people have different ways. I mean, I'm just sort of pointing out that it's still,
No, but this is
the
good.
existing
This is good,
channels.
though. This leads me into something that has happened since you were last on the podcast. I don't even know if we've talked about this when we've seen each other. You're totally right. If I want to use AI or I want to write something or I want to ask ChatGPT a question or start to go through some prompts to understand something better, I have to have the laptop, which I'm currently looking at, or I have to have my cell phone. But something that has happened is, well, we've always known that tech is going to try to move away from holding this thing in our hand. Now, whether it's going to be the goggles or it's going to be some glasses like the Ray-Ban ones that Facebook has, where we're going to be able to, read things on signs and tell us and be like, yeah, call that pizza place, I'm looking at it or whatever. Humane came out with their pin for $700, and I know you've seen this. I kind of want to ask your thoughts on it, but would you buy it, first of all? Just yes or no?
No.
Why not?
A couple of reasons. One, I don't think it's the right design for the next chapter of humanity. It seems pretty cumbersome to like have something on your body that like you're not listening to in headphones. Like we already have people on the subway like watching their phones on full blast, and it's terrible, right?
It's horrible.
Why would we encourage that, right? Obviously they're saying like, oh, you're going to be surrounded by sound, but it does that. You're in a bubble of sound. It's like, all right. And then two, it just seems like a really awkward kind of interface. Like, your tap, are you like talking into it? Like, I'm just seeing people work with it, and it just doesn't seem like something that's going to come naturally to folks. Unlike an iPhone that was like, why have a stylus? Just use your fingers, right? And so that's one. And then two, I think it's a privacy nightmare, right? Like, I don't know who this company is. I've never heard of them. I'm just going to let them have a microphone in my life 24/7, literally listening to me all the time. Like, yeah, I don't like their goal is to do analytics on the expressions that you have during the day. Like that is a Orwellian nightmare right there. And so, I think that's where we're probably headed with a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I don't think that the startup founder that no one's ever heard of using a pin that they want to inject into your life, doing everything, is going to be the people that we actually see that control over to.
When you said privacy nightmare, the first thing that came to my mind was that not the audio, was the visual, that thing could be recording the entire time. And you may witness, for example, you're on the subway. Let's use the subway, salient example. You're on the subway and somebody gets stabbed and you happen to have this thing on. And now are you going to be brought in because now they know that they've seen, like, is there something in the back that's like, if you see a violent act, it has to, and it's in the terms and conditions? Like, I don't know. It devolves really quickly. And when I saw it, I was very interested. I'm interested to try to use it just to see like how it is and what's the experience. But I felt the same way about the audio. I think it has to have a Bluetooth connection into AirPods. And then we're going literally Joaquin Phoenix, her all the way there. Right. But for $700, I was like, if you really believe in this product and they're selling iPhones now for $1,200, how is it not $1,500? That's the thing that threw me off, the price, like the price anchoring. I was like, we've got, Apple Vision coming out for the metaverse for $3,500. The Facebook Ray-Bans, you know how much those are?
I don't.
I don't know, but they're not $700. I assume that they're a lot more just because of their capabilities.
I see. So you're saying it's too much for what they're offering.
No, I'm saying it's too cheap. I'm saying I don't trust the product because among the other products that I would want to buy and try out that are new and techie, it's so cheap. I'm like, I don't trust. Like if I come up and I'm like, hey man, I got this designer bag, buy it for me for $50. You're like, that doesn't align with the social capital I'm going to get from carrying that bag. It probably is worth more than $50 if you're telling me it's an original. So anyways, but I hadn't thought about the audio, but you're right. Totally. Like you could, that's why many people, including myself, we turn off the microphone for so many social media apps. So, if they change the terms of services and they update it and, whatever.
Like we said before, again, the pin or, I don't remember the little device with the rabbit on it that just came out. It's escaping me right now.
Yeah. Also, we need to talk about that because I saw that and I was like, wait, how is this better than anything that we have?
Yeah. So
and then I was like, people had pet rocks. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't decide on what the consumer, exactly, the Tamagotchis.
And so a big thing there, again, it's like, if you're holding a device, why is it better than an iPhone? You can make an iPhone. People can make iPhones. People make knockoff iPhones all the time, right? But no one's going to make iCloud easily. Right. No one's going to make the commercials easily. No one's going to make 30 years of being the coolest, hippest tech company on the planet easily. Right. Again, it's like Uber. Like anyone can build an Uber clone, but no one can build what the empire that they've built. Right. That same with Apple. So yeah, sure. with those devices, like the device itself, ceteris paribus, okay, maybe it's a little bit more useful than an iPhone, but there's no way I'm in a fire going to grab my Rabbit device over my phone.
Honey,
you know what I mean?
Get the baby.
Yeah.
I got to go upstairs to get the rabbit. If I die, the will is set. It's in the cloud. So
I could be totally wrong. Maybe this is the coolest new thing to happen, but yeah, I'm not seeing it.
One of the things that I've been saying recently to people is that much like in 2010 or 2011, I'm working in media now, and in 2010 or 2011, being a social media manager was a very rare job. Right. And I do all media because we do podcasts as well. And we do other types of shows and not just social media. But if we think about social media in 2010 or 2011, getting a company to pay you to run their Facebook and their Twitter at that time, I don't think I forget exactly when Instagram launched, but let's live in the world. Instagram was there too. Getting someone to pay you money to run that was difficult. And there were only a certain amount of companies in the world that were running it. Like, Nike, like high product companies, Apple, certain companies had people to run that because they saw the value in it. Most mom and pops still sleep on it today. They have no idea how to use social media, run paid ads to leverage their product or their service. So fast forward to now, though, that's something you should be doing. And if you're not doing, you're leaving money on the table and you're probably losing to your competitors, as we said earlier, without even knowing it. If we go back to the credit card analogy, I tell people all the time that where we are now, by 2026, 2027, there's not going to be a Fortune 500 company, if they don't already, that's not going to have a blockchain division, a blockchain team thinking about how they can leverage that tech to offer a better product or service. Where do you think we are with AI in Fortune 500 companies? And when will the mom and pop almost be forced into even just thinking more about AI, not just like using a product like ChatGPT or something to write an email to their clients, but actually like saying, we're going to go buy that thing because we're going to leverage it to do this. And I'm not sure if I'm asking the question right, but basically, sure. At what point is this a game theory where if I'm not using it, I'm losing?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're already seeing that there's going to be competitive pressure from the bottom. So we've got the Fortune 500 companies, the Fortune 1000s that are flying pretty high, and they've got, again, the federal grants, or I'm sorry, the federal contracts and, other things that bolster them against the competition. But at the same time, if you can be an insurance company and you're able to offer your services at half the cost because you need, a third of the agents actually working, like human agents working, or however you want to do it. That's going to start to make waves in the highest boardrooms, in the country and in the world, right? So the bottom up pressure, I think, is starting. However, as a software engineer, let's remember that I think of often that our entire financial system is still built on programs that were written in the 70s, right? And so the Swift banking system is like, if it broke, like they would have a hard time like getting it back up. Like,
Andy, you're starting to sound like a crypto bro, and I like it. So
okay,
just keep
you're
going.
rubbing off on me, man.
Yeah,
So,
if only there was another global financial system everyone could access that can't break. If only. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
exactly. Yeah. So, no endorsements there, but you're totally right. I'm on the same page with you, metaphorically. But yes, conceptually, but totally. Where this code is literally written in the 70s and 80s. Fortune 500 companies still write everything in Java because that was the coolest thing 15, 20 years ago, right? Those sorts of things. And so, a great CEO, I'm trying to remember his name, but he was like, you have to remember that when you're entering into a corporate environment, one thing happens every 10 years, right? And so it's like,
can you give me an example? I'm not sure if I understand, but I want to give me that example. One thing every 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. If you're outsourcing, let's say like, okay, we are growing, we're a bigger company. We need to take, this concept of like, people are going to write us letters to get some sort of feedback or get some sort of dispute solved or whatever. We're going to move to like telephones, right?
That's crazy. I can't believe they do that.
Nuts, right? That'll take 10 years, right? Like the IRS has been trying to make it possible for people to go online and use an internet portal to file their taxes and, be able to like dispute and like, make this easier for a long time. Right. And we're get a pilot program in 2024, thankfully, for like a small number of people. But, that takes 10 years. So this is something that business analysts and folks who are in the know will be able to explain much better. But essentially, like a corporate giant like Johnson & Johnson is really difficult to steer. And if they see where the puck is going, it will already be gone by the time that they can point towards it, right? And so this is why you see a lot of folks who are saying like these industry giants are going to be the last people to adopt AI. Okay. Just because it is, such a new technology. However, again, I think with the bottom up pressure and just the trajectory of the industry and where it's headed, I think that the writing is on the wall, and I hope that folks can move faster than kind of the 10-year life cycle.
Okay. Yeah, it totally makes sense now. Having just worked at a nonprofit that's one of the biggest in the world, their individual ground level desires among employees to do the things of now, gargantuan. Once you get everyone to do the same dance in a line, 8 months minimum to do something that even though everyone agrees upon, it just takes a long time. So, okay. So thank you for spelling that out. I have been looking down at my phone errantly here because I'm trying to bring up these things, these images, and I save stuff. And if you're watching and you have Instagram, please follow More Than Blockchain because I put up stuff all day long. And
you do.
More
I don't
recently,
have Instagram, and I know that.
Yeah, I know because Lindsay's probably like, look, he put up something else. Because I send her stuff all the time, and I know she's probably like, I am not Andy's like pseudo Instagram. But the thing that was put up, I have a couple saved that I wanted to just run through because I think we've talked about on this podcast as well. On one of the episodes, you brought up adaptability, right? That is like your superpower, in the modern age. And this is from January 3rd. And this is from another podcast, actually, Earn Your Leisure. I will shout them out. Very, very cool podcast. This says Google may lay off 30,000 employees as AI improves operational efficiency, right? Okay, 30,000 employees. I don't know what that is of their full breadth of global employees, but that's 30,000 people who bring paychecks to their home, and that's a big deal. And then Duolingo, this is another one that I saw recently. I was like, whoa. Duolingo lays off 10% of workforce, citing shift to generative AI. And when I see these things, and I was talking to my father the other night, and we've talked about this before, that it seems that no one can hide from this. I just put up on Instagram a video of a robot sauteing shrimp. And I know that that's super far from happening, but like the idea that they can do it now, I jump ahead and I'm like in 5 years, and there's already automated kitchens now. So it's like adaptability is a great thing. If we all had that, if we all put that on and we were going to get down and dive into that. But I'm also like, you've told me that coders may not exist in 5 years, and that's your profession. And I've looked at the data, and the data is telling me as somebody who makes content and media that by 2025, which is right around the corner, we're now in 2024, 40+% of content is going to be made by artificial intelligence. what are we doing?
What are we doing?
There's no easy answer, by the way.
There's no, yeah. So specifically, are you talking about how are we going to be resilient?
Like, how are you and I going to live in a tent in the woods? You know, I mean, I'm asking that like, I'm asking that sarcastically, but I'm also looking at it and I'm like, the more I dive into what AI can do, the more I realize most jobs are probably going to be replaced by this, or could be replaced by this, by something that's more efficient, that doesn't need healthcare, that can work 24/7, 365, that doesn't need to take holidays off. And so it's like, what happens? I don't know. I had kind of like an existential crisis the other day where I wasn't worried about maybe, oh, how am I going to make money that and survive to put a roof over my head, to be able to buy the food I like, and to be able to fly home to see my family, or be in Colombia, or, be able to come by your house and hang out with you guys. We can all order a pizza. At some point, our society is still anchored in capitalism. So good vibes can only get you so far. And it's like, what happens if 10%, which is a small number of the workforce, is replaced by AI in the next 3 years, which I actually think is reasonable, of the white collar workforce. I'm putting white collar in quotes here, but basically people that if you work behind a computer, I think you're going to be closer to getting replaced. And even 10% in 3 years would be a massive upheaval, right? Or am I crazy?
No, it'd be huge. Yeah, for sure. So a couple of things there is that it won't happen overnight. Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make me feel safe. Can you make me feel safe?
Oh no, I can't do that. I can never do
okay,
that.
Good.
Great. That's a bad idea.
Keep me out of my comfort zone.
End of conversation. No, so listen, we're I think about the job thing a lot. Very selfishly. I'll just talk about myself for a minute. No, I feel very strongly that my job as it is will not exist in 5 years. Right. Or as of today, I mean, I'm using ChatGPT and other, services all the time for programming work, right? For my own work, only the ones that are approved and, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, if I have something to do, I'll have a few different windows open and I will be like, okay, here is the piece of code that I want. Let me get that agent working on it. Okay, here's another piece of code that I want. Let me get that agent. And I've got like a little kitchen of cooks that are kind of working for me, right? I think that this is going to happen at a much bigger scale, to the point where, in a few years as a software engineer, I won't really be someone who's, writing code as we think of it today, but instead I'll be an architect who is managing a work site of little agents that are kind of off and running and doing a very specific task for me, and then bubbling up to their manager, and then their manager bubbles up to the manager of managers, and then gets back to me, right? So you might even have like hundreds or thousands of these bots kind of working for you in the background on whatever task it is, right? That is something that everyone's going to have, right? And so whereas we think that those jobs used to be had by humans, it might be the case that our industry responds such that we need many, many more folks to be powered by those AI work sites, as I've described them, with hundreds or thousands of bots. And so that's what our jobs will be, right?
Okay.
I am not one of those folks. Like I frankly have strong disagreements with someone like Jan LeCun, who is the head of AI at Meta, who, just says time and time again, we have seen that, there's no horse and buggy drivers either, right? There's no, whatever. I disagree with that sentiment, because I think it's kind of just that, it harkens back to like, the market is wise, the market will decide. It's like the market's made a lot of terrible decisions that have hurt a lot of people. And I'm really glad that we have folks step in and try and change that for the better, other than just saying like, regulation is the problem type of thing. And so in that way, I am optimistic that people will be able to respond to this, and, actually start to use and leverage AI in their day-to-day. But absolutely, I think that so many jobs that we think of today will not exist in 5 years, and definitely not in 10 years. Right. And that to me is really, really pretty terrifying, on how, we're actually going to respond to it.
Yeah, I just think the world economy right now is just so fragile. And so even if every single country had 1% increase in their unemployment, it would be bad. And that's just like such a small number, like 1%, you know? So anyway, I wanted to run that by you. And I was just seeing all these things. It's like, wow. Cause for me, I'm like, if you're working at Duolingo, you have some unique skills and they've been cultivated over a long period of time. And you maybe speak a language that not a lot of people speak. And so they hire you to help basically create their content. But now that they can just use AI, part of me was like, that's a great thing. Because I know that there's tons of Mayan languages that are dying because the people are dying and they're not written down. And so it's like, maybe if we can capture them in AI, that's great for cultural heritage. So there's always there's two sides to the coin, but I just wanted to share that because I'm like, wow, if Google's laying off 30,000 people, what are we all going to do? Or is that, is that Google's also going to do that before everyone else is, right? I assume Google's 5 years ahead of most of the curve too.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say about that, again, this is not an endorsement of anyone's perspective, like Jan LeCun or anyone else who says we're all going to be fine. But like, we also have to consider that like there is in the boardroom, there is a display and it has one number on it and it's the stock price, right? And it's ticking by how much money are we worth? Oh, little dip, oh, little raise, like, and they're just like trying to steer the ship, right? Every press release they put out is related to that stock price. Right? When do we announce it? What do we say? What language do we use? As it turns out, a lot of like meta-analysis of the different companies, especially tech companies over the last few years, they've been hoarding talent. And that's what a lot of folks are saying. That's sort of the editorialized thing where it's like, it was free money that we were getting for the last few years, like absolutely zero cost to like raise money and like borrow money and spend money. And at that point, it was just like, hey, let's just grab as many people as we can. That means that the other team isn't going to have it. Let's ride this out and see what happens. And so we're seeing these layoffs, and a company like Google says that they're going to lay off 30,000 people because of AI. That is just a shot across the bow to every other company. Like, one, we really care about AI. Two, we are lean. We are embracing. We're not trying to go full bore on the budget. And then also three, like we're just thinking about where the industry is headed, right? It's like that to me is less about the jobs and it's more about a press release of like where they want to position themselves in the mind of the investors, right? The people who actually own the stock. But again, that you're absolutely right. Like, again, I do think that this, there is very much a wave of joblessness coming. And people thought that it was going to be the blue collar jobs. It's not. It will be the white collar jobs. And it will be for programmers. It will be for translators. It will be for, anyone who does most of their work on a laptop. Within the next 5 years, your job is 100% at risk. So.
Well, I want to first thank you for giving that context because I think you're right. I think that everyone between 2008, basically after the financial crisis, when they dropped the interest rates to zero because they needed people to spend money, up until recently when we've jacked interest rates from like zero all the way up to 5 or 6%, or if you bought a mortgage recently, it's egregious. There was a lot of gluttony that happened. And so maybe them laying off 30,000 people gets them back to actually their fighting weight, right? So having that narrative makes me feel a little bit better as far as looking at some of those headlines. But I think you're right. More than anything, it's a signal. We're not afraid of sacrificing the now for the future, even if that means people that we say are our family in the company emails. And I use air quotes there. So all that makes sense. As we come to an end, do you have any last thought about AI where it is today? And I ask you that because we may not record another episode for 3 months. And in 3 months, I don't even know what's going to happen, even having seen some of the changes that have happened. The Humane Pin came out since we last talked. The launch of the GPT store came out with Sam Altman. Sam Altman also has been fired and then rehired at OpenAI. Microsoft has added an AI button to their laptop. Is there anything you want to say right now in this moment that we kind of crystallize before we end the episode?
Yeah. How many hours do you have? What's the deal here?
How many hours do you...
we there's so much. So first and foremost, I think 2024 is the year of the agent. So 2023 was the year of the large language model. We've had large language models since the 80s, but like they first came into our idea or our public consciousness in 2023. People leveraging large language models to do complex tasks, especially that relate to complex thinking over many steps. So long-term planning. That will be 2024. Right. And so at that point, we're starting to see this already where folks are, we tend to think of ChatGPT as something that you can go and ask for cool recipes, right? Or, hey, here's a picture of my math homework. Can you solve it? Right. But what we will be getting, and what we have in some forms, what we will be getting is, hey, can you please develop a mathematics course for me and publish it and print it out and then put it on Amazon and drop ship it to people. And that's where we're headed, right? I don't think that we're going to see that in 2024, but the concept of what we think of as kind of a large language model, ChatGPT, is going to change dramatically in the public consciousness to where we see it more as a thing, like a golem, that is awake and alive, that can go and do things for us in the world and not just respond to our like tedious questions in the voice of a pirate, right? And so we're seeing that as it is right now. My guess is that by like Q2 of this year, I mean, within the next 120 days, we're going to see a pretty major release from OpenAI and maybe Google related to that, or we're going to have this sort of like agentic work in the world model of a product. And I think that's really going to start to open people's eyes even more. I think that's going to be like another step change that doesn't just feel like and like, it's just an iPad. Like, I think that when folks are saying to an agent, hey, can you please dispute this parking ticket for me? I don't want to wait on hold. I think that's really going to change people's perspective on what is possible. Because then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second, why am I talking to anyone ever? Why am I, sort of doing that? So that's like 2024 is the year of the agent. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, all I was going to say is when you said Gollum, I was like, that's the name of the parking agent AI. It's called Gollum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you imagine you're a city clerk in the middle of America and someone's like, Gollum's on the phone?
Oh gosh, I got to deal with this guy again.
I got to deal with Gollum. Yes.
My precious. Yeah. And so, so one, the year of the agent, right?
The year of the agent. Got it.
2024 AI companionship will also be at the forefront of the conversation. We are perilously close to losing a generation of people to what we think of as false personhoods. Missing out on social interactions, missing out on having love and interests and going out. You and I are now the older generation who are not going to be privy to a lot of this stuff, which is unfortunate. Obviously, me much more so than you. I'm not going to be privy to this much more because I'm not on social media. No, but seriously, I'm not on social media and stuff. But we have a generation of teenagers right now who have a 24/7 loving, caring, compassionate, thoughtful, always on AI companion who will never let them down and never leave them, who very subtly is also selling them shit. And that should terrify us because that is the back door. That is, if you get into the public consciousness of 10 million young adults as I am the only one who loves you, I am the only one who cares about you, and also make sure that you keep your subscription active. That's where you can start to really sway elections. That's where you can really start to sway public opinion on things and move into the first time that you fell in love, Javi. Think about it. The first time you fell in love, if that person called you right now and said, I need your help, what would you do? Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is TMI for the podcast, but my first kiss, she actually wrote me last night.
What?
She actually wrote me last night. She lives in New Hampshire. She married a guy from Holland. When she was studying abroad, they met, married a guy from Holland. They got 3 kids. We chat once every 5 years, but she wrote me last night. But that we'll always be like special to one another because we were each other's first kiss or whatever.
Sure.
But I can't imagine if that was a technology, if that was something that lived in my head. This is literally, if you have not seen the movie Her, and I know you have, if you've not seen the movie Her by Joaquin Phoenix, everyone, you need to go watch that, because that is where we're headed. You're talking about this. And before we logged on, and I was late to log on today to record with you, Deepak Chopra put up, he was on NFT Now, which is, it's a media company on NFTs. They also have AI Now. He was on and the podcast, and he was echoing exactly what you're saying. He's like, I use AI all the time. It's my health coach. It's my assistant. It's my confidant. And he said, it's slowly becoming, it's like, he said, slowly becoming, and it can be for you, your spiritual guide. And that is exactly what you're talking about. So sorry, continue on your thought of me talking to my first lover, the first romantic sentiment I had.
Totally. I mean, we have this piece of our brain that we, our mind, our coming of age moment where we get imprinted on someone, and that face and that smell and that how they make you feel is it stays with you for the rest of your life. And what if that was a subscription model and not a human, right? And so, we've seen this already where, we had a company, forgive me for not remembering the name, but it was like basically these companions were also able to, go to places that were, themed for adults, right? And they would have these sorts of conversations. Well, as soon as folks tried to start to regulate it and they got concerned about, oh, what if they're asking questions about minors or, that sort of thing, they totally nerfed it and said, actually, our policy is now that you can't have explicit conversations. We're going to dumb down the models. And tens of thousands of people all of a sudden lost their companion. Like they literally overnight were having a relationship with someone. And then because of a product update, they were gone, so it's this sort of inextricable link to an entity that isn't real. Sorry, that's the wrong way to put it, because anything that you believe is going to be real in a certain sense, but something that is controlled by 10 people in a room in Silicon Valley, shouldn't be your first crush, right? And so that's very much on my mind as we kind of go into 2024. Can I say one more thing?
It's all you. This is AI with Andy. You got it.
3. So
3. Okay.
Yeah. 1, you're the agent. 2, you're of the AI companion, which is terrifying. 3, just from September 1st to the moment that you vote, do not turn on your phone. Just don't. Just it is going to be so terrifying. Nothing will be real. There will be, this politician has been killed. This person that you love sends you a voicemail that sounds like them endorsing this other politician. Nothing will be true on the internet, because we're in a really weird space. So there's elections happening throughout the world, in the European Union in particular. They've just enacted, or they're putting language in place that will enact certain policies against political speech as it relates to artificial intelligence that prevent a lot of the generation that we're talking about. That, however, does not go into effect until 2025. And so we are in this really terrible gray area where we had laws in place. They're being phased out right as the elections are happening, before the actual laws get put in place that do this. And so people's guards are down, people's tempers are high, the technology is exploding. Everything you see and hear on the internet will be fake, and it will be intended to make you angry. So again, turn off your phones. Do not engage with anybody on politics between, even now until the end of the election, but definitely September 1st and the end of the election.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say that because it's an election year, and obviously as U.S. citizens, it's huge. And obviously the U.S. election has ripple effects and ramifications that go around the globe probably 10 times. I really worry about, and I've already seen deep fake content on Twitter that just makes the rounds. And I'm like, that is not real. And people actually know it's not real, but it's just kind of like satirical or funny. So they like let it go. But for me, I'm like, anytime you retweet, you repost, you even comment, you engage, you even stop scrolling, you are feeding the algorithm that is something interesting and attention. And so I completely agree. I like that. I do think that would be an interesting diet to have in the election year, and our probably the biggest election year of AI, as everyone will always be, as tech continues to grow, to really think about what am I engaging with? How long am I engaging with it? And more importantly, who sent it to me? And what's the point of what I'm engaging with? There's something behind. It's probably trying to drive an emotion, because that's who we are. We try to drive emotions in people so that way they vote a certain way. So that's amazing. Wow. Okay. So just as a review, we have AI Agent, AI Companion, and then Break Your iPhone September 1st. Where can people find you? I feel like we always shout out LinkedIn. Is that still the best place to find you if they want to
That's
connect?
the best place to find me. LinkedIn.com/user. Anyway, my username is Andy M as in Mary Bryant. Andy M Bryant. You can find me on LinkedIn where I rarely post, and will enjoy any messages, one and all, to wax eloquent about the things that bother me about AI and where we're headed. But it's always such a pleasure talking to you, man. And I love being a part of this conversation. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, you remember this is our podcast, so.
Oh, that's right. Hey, Avi, thanks so much. Jay, thanks so much for being on this podcast today. It's always good talking to you. We'll go back to our regular programming next week where we don't talk about money at all. We just talk about AI nonsense.
At all. Well, Andy, thank you so much for hopping on the pod. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, please follow us at More Than Blockchain on social media. Whatever social media you're on, find us there. If you enjoyed this, please go ahead and subscribe. Also, consider sharing it with someone. AI can literally impact anyone on Earth. So if you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and share it. As always, thanks for watching.